Well, thank you all so much for watching the film Nasrin. For those who don't know, Jeff Kaufman is a writer, director, and producer whose works include documentaries, short films, illustrations, and picture books. And producer Marsha Ross is a former casting director whose credits span movies from favorites like 10 Things I Hate About You, Oblivion, Romeo and Michelle's High School Reunion, and more. The two have worked on documentaries together titled Every Act of Life, The State of Marriage, Father Joseph, The Savoy King, among others, along with the critically acclaimed film Nasrin. Jeff and Marsha, thank you both so much for this incredible film. Before we really dig deep, I'd love for you to just tell us what drew you to Nasrin's story and how you first heard about her.
Do you want to start, Marsha?
No, you start, because you came across Nasrin first in a previous, working on a previous film.
Sure. And you can see how we work together. See, it's a very cooperative. We work together, we're married, and it's nice to be mutually respectful, even in interviews. So I've done a number of films about human rights, several with Amnesty International, several separate, and just by some life flow direction thing, quite a few about Iran. And the more I've read about Iran and connected with people from Iran, the more attached I've become to this rich culture and these amazing people. And you have this strong feeling that the Iran that you're presented in America isn't the real country. These aren't the real people. And there's so much depth and interest there. So I'd done a previous film, among others, about the persecution of the Baha'i faith in Iran. And how, if you're a member of the Baha'i faith, which is a highly persecuted minority, besides you can be arrested and killed, if you're a teenager, you can't go to college, it's hard to get a job, you can't work for the government, you can't open your own store. It's just horrible. But one of the things I found so moving doing that film was often Muslim neighbors, Muslim friends would risk everything for their Baha'i neighbor, their Baha'i friend, to help them out, to help them get a license for a store, to walk them into Tehran University so they could attend a class. You know, a little innocent thing like that can ruin your life, and yet that was a frequent occurrence. And to me, along with so many other things about Nasrin, that just flips this image that we're being propagated here in this country about Islam on its head. And also here you have Nasrin Sotoudeh, who is this strong-willed woman who fights for religious minorities, for children, for women's rights. You know, she's often putting herself at risk for others not just like her, but she believes that we all deserve rights. And to me, that's such a significant message for this country too. She's also supported, as Marsha says, by her Marty Ginsburg, Reza Khandan, her husband, who adores her and is as brave as she is and will do anything to support her cause. All those things, I think, are really important messages for America now, especially as we see Islam and Iran demonized for political purposes. So all that and more led us to reach out to Nasrin years ago through mutual friends, and along with doing this film, develop a long-term relationship.
Oh my gosh, that's so wonderful. Yeah, I feel like Iran gets a bad rap, honestly. And as an Iranian American myself, it was really refreshing just to see footage of the city that I never had an opportunity to see before. Could you both tell me a little bit more about the making of this film and some of the unconventional filmmaking tricks that you had to use?
Sure. I mean, you just said something, though, that I think was so important to us, is portraying Iran as a contemporary society, much like our own in so many ways. You know, many people in this country, they have no idea that Iran is a beautiful, beautiful place with an Apple store, or that it snows, or, you know, there's just so many things and we really wanted to show that, for people who knew nothing about Iran, to have a really beautiful introduction to the country. And to those who knew a lot about it, to feel this real connection to, for many people, a place that can never return. So we did a lot of different things in terms of making the film, but one of the things is that we had, Jeff had worked previously with some DPs in Iran, and he sort of followed up and reconnected to some of them. And we asked them to follow Nasrin around and
yeah, I just say some of this we need to be a little careful about, but go ahead.
Well, they're anonymous. I mean, they're not people. I mean, they risked a lot to make the film, but they were very, very discreet. So, they were with her at various times filming her, and we sent notes over about some of the things that we wanted them to do. We also met other filmmakers who had been there, and we looked a lot in a lot of different ways. And we also traveled abroad ourselves and did interviews ourselves with Shirin Ebadi and Dr. Tagramani and Montserrat, and we went to the European Union as well. And that was really incredible, meeting people who live in exile from a country that they can never return to, and they miss it. They miss the beauty of their country. That's something that really got to me making the film.
Oh my gosh, yeah. What are some other things about Iranian culture that really surprised you?
Not surprised me, but just to sort of nourish one. I mean, there's that famous novel, My Uncle Napoleon, I think, is that what it's called? That famous Iranian novel. Have you read it before? Oh my God, it's so great. It was a novel that was written, I think, right around the time of the revolution, maybe right beforehand, but it was then adopted into a TV series in Iran that's very popular. And it's about Iran during World War II. As the British and the Nazis are competing to control Iran, there's this family war. There's a war within this one family about control over their compound. And I started to read it because I thought, it's a famous Iranian book, I should read it. And then after like 10 pages, I thought, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And it's just one example of Iranian music and poetry. And one of the things is that our last film was about Terrence McNally, the American playwright. And Terrence, who sadly passed away from COVID in March, he so believed that the arts could push society forward, that artists are often the ones that lead the rest of us. And Nasrin passionately believes that too. So, we talked a little bit about that as we were setting up what we're going to do, but part of it is just waiting to see where Nasrin would take those cameras. And the fact that she took them into an art gallery and a theater and a bookstore, and it's just, that's really reflects something about her, but it also says something about a really vibrant society.
Can I just add something to that as well, Olivia? I think for me too, I was really taken by the women. Iran has an incredibly vibrant, active women's rights movement. I mean, they, despite the incredible amount of oppression that they have in that society, they are unrelenting and they persist and they continue to try to really make a difference, in the culture and for the lives of other women. And the other thing for me as a mother, and I know you're a new mom too, so you can understand that as a mother myself, these women were willing to risk so much and potentially end up in prison, as Nasrin has, or Nargis Mohammadi and so many other women go to prison to fight for the future of others and their own children in Iran. And they did not feel that, because I asked this question, they didn't see it as a sacrifice. It was not a sacrifice. It wasn't a choice. It was what they had to do. And it really moved me, and getting to know obviously Reza and their two children that have grown up with their mother in prison and now in prison again. They're two incredible young people who are, if you met them, they're very well balanced. I mean, emotionally, they've had a lot of support from their family, and it's hard with their mom in the situation, but at the same time, they're really getting on with their own, with their lives in the right way, very well adjusted. I'm very moved by that, and a lot of, wonderful parenting. And I think they really understand what their mother is trying to accomplish. It's just bigger than, any one individual. But that was very moving to me.
Totally. And I think something that was interesting, was that, speaking about women's rights in Iran, you both began the film with just a little fact about the Persian Empire and how back then women could own property, had way more rights than they do today. I'm not sure if this was in there, but they could be war generals. It very much showed kind of a regression. of these rights. So I thought it was interesting to kind of include the whole picture, how this is just a very, recent issue in the scale of Iran's history, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the tricky things with a film like this is people can come to it from a lot of different backgrounds and experiences. And so you wanted to speak to people who know nothing about Iran, know nothing about Nasrin, walk in blank, and those who have a lifetime of experience. And also, events don't happen in a vacuum. They're part of a continuum, and that continuum will go on from us. I think one of the things that I think is an indictment of people, politicians often in this country, probably every country, is that they want to make history what they want it to be, not what it really is. And it's so vital to understand, as Dr. Romani mentions in the film, this complicated and often very painful connection between our two countries. And we have a lot of responsibility for that over and over and over again. It doesn't lessen the responsibility of Iran to stand up for the human rights accords that they've actually signed, international agreements. But it explains why we may not be the most, I'm being light about it, why our hypocrisy doesn't often interfere with good relations.
Absolutely.
You were talking though about the women of Iran and the history of the women in Iran. I think it's really important to realize that the women are so well educated. I mean, Dr. Shirin Ebadi, who's the Nobel laureate who we interviewed in London, she was a lawyer, and at 23 years old, she was a judge. And after the revolution, when actually they all thought everything was going to change for the good, it did not change for the good. And Shirin went from being the attorney, the judge at 23 years old, to then being a clerk, having to answer to a male judge who took her position. And that tells you that in a nutshell, what happened there, and the reverse for women. And yet, I think in the colleges and the universities now, there are many, many women there in school there now too. I mean, it's interesting, so many countries in the Middle East, the women were frequently much more educated and much more professional, than the men at one time.
Yeah, absolutely. And college enrollment in Iran is majority female, as you mentioned in the film.
Yeah.
And just kind of, pivoting a little bit, I couldn't tell from the movie, and I'm not sure what Nasrin's rights are now, but was she ever able to see this documentary?
No, I mean, we were filming with her. In fact, Marcia and I were having a conversation with Nasrin and Reza one day. We were in New York. They were obviously in Tehran. They were walking through a park in Tehran, talking to us on FaceTime. Talked for like an hour, about the film, where things are going, what we want next, life, and every time you talk to Nasrin and Reza, there's always something to joke about, even under difficult circumstances. And then like 3 days later, she was arrested.
Oh.
So she hasn't had a chance to see the film. At first, Reza wanted to wait a while, but he saw it a couple months ago, and he's seen it a number of times since. And, I think the whole family find it, fortunately, a moving experience. But he talks to her a lot about it, and she feels that people seeing this film is very important. And we do look forward to seeing it with her someday soon.
Yeah, inshallah.
Yeah, she's interesting because, when you get the footage and you're looking at the footage, you're thinking about, we always had, we thought about the story that we wanted to tell and a lot of different things, but through the editing process, really, I felt, and I've said this a lot, you begin to realize that I think she understood completely, what her fate could be, that she did think she could get arrested again. I mean, she knew representing the girls of Revolution Street, Nargis Husseini was a danger to her. She knew, but and I think that in the making of the film became an opportunity for her at different times to say what she wanted the world to know about what she believed. And because she does it. I mean, when you really start to look at it all together, she's really communicating exactly what she believes and exactly what she wants and exactly what she thinks, because I think she feared at some point she might not have a voice. And I think the film really, I believe the film really reflects, her voice and what she wants people to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, a lot of the people who have just seen this film they aren't really familiar with Iran. They aren't familiar with Nasrin's struggle. What is, the message or a message that you hope viewers are taking away from this experience?
Well, one connects directly to what Marcia said a moment ago, because oftentimes when the authorities in Iran arrest someone, they try to intimidate their whole family. And they use that arrest as a way to say, don't say anything, be quiet. That's the only way to get your family member out. And Nasrin has said over and over again, don't be silent. I won't be silent. She's in prison now, and she's still using that incarceration as a way to amplify her message. But Reza, was arrested a few months after Nasrin, and he was in prison for 3 months, and he was then put out on bail with a threat that if you say anything, if you advocate for your wife, you could go right back in prison. Well, he refuses to be quiet too. So I think that connects very directly to this country right now, or whatever your country you're in. You have to stand up for your rights, and you have to make your voice heard. And for Nasrin and Reza and so many colleagues that they have in this struggle, that voice means universal human rights, mutual respect, justice that's fair for all, respect whatever religion you are from or background you're from, or gender you are. The law should treat you equally and fairly and give you opportunity. She's dedicated her whole life to that. And she always made it clear when we talked about making this film, she always made it clear that she didn't want it to be just about her. She wanted it to lift others. And so that's part of our mission too.
Yeah, I would add a few things, and just concurring with Jeff. I mean, we want the film to make a lot of noise because, the more noise the film makes, I think it will bring more attention to her, and we do hope that she can be released at some point, sooner than later. Obviously, we also wanted to introduce people to Iran. I said this earlier, but in a way, the people, the governments are not the people. We only frequently know about other countries through what we read in the newspaper because what's going on between our government and another government. But we know here in our own country, I mean, not our government does not represent every single person in this country. But if you read a newspaper in a foreign country, you might think so. And we really wanted to show that we have to separate the people from the governments in many ways and realize that there's a common humanity amongst people. I think that's just a very important thing for people to really understand.
Yeah, it was a real treat for me. My father hasn't been back in 30 years. I haven't been able to visit Iran. I loved being able to see footage of these streets and these stores. That art gallery opening was like surreal to be able to watch, and just seeing Iranians in their everyday lives. They get such a backwards portrayal in this country that it was just really refreshing, honestly, to just see a day in the life of an Iranian, truly. So yeah, I just really appreciated that, and I know my family can't wait to see the film as well.
Can I add one thing, if you don't mind, which is that, I'm so glad you responded to the film, and I hope that everyone else who sees it through the Denver Film Festival feels the same way, and they'll connect to this wonderful family and this woman who is as fierce as a bulldozer, but also a smile that could light up a room. And I just hope that everyone will remember that right now she's in a horrible prison, and very weak. The prison is ravaged by COVID-19, and also just in inhumane conditions under normal circumstances. And people can help. So I hope that folks will go to our website, which is Nasrin Film, www.nasrinfilm.com. There's a chance to know more about Nasrin and her colleagues. There's also a chance to sign a petition and get involved and stay with us as we pursue the film for all the reasons Nasrin wanted, which is to shine a beacon around the world for what human rights can be wherever you are, but also to advocate for Nasrin's release. So, it's sometimes, you go see a movie and it's a wonderful experience and that's it. But everyone can participate in Nasrin's life right now if they get involved.
Absolutely. The film was 90 minutes, and everyone watching can take a couple extra minutes more to make sure that this woman makes it out. I know we're kind of wrapping up now, but I did want to ask, what are you both working on next? What are some other projects that are in the works right now?
And just to say that there's a couple other things bubbling along the way, but it's a curse to talk about them publicly. But we appreciate your interest. And
Well, I can say we're working actually on a couple of narrative sort of things. We
Hmm.
decided to, do, we both have a long history in narrative. I had a very, a 3-decade career in casting in narrative film and television. We try and bring that sensibility of storytelling to our documentaries. We try to think about our films in terms of our cast, who are compelling characters that you want to watch and what's the arc of their story. And so we thought maybe we've had some ideas for things that we're sort of developing now into narrative.
yeah, and the campaign goes on. So
I was going to say, I imagine during COVID, you have a lot of time to work in pre-production and get these stories in the right spot before production. Is there anything that I haven't asked you both that you would like viewers to know about the film or to share with audiences?
Just we really appreciate everyone watching, and they hope that they'll go to the website, find out more about Nasrin, share the word, and realize that her cause is Iran, but it's really the world. She was inspired by Nelson Mandela. She was inspired by Mahatma Gandhi. We hope that some piece of her goes into others and makes them realize how important it is to fight for human rights. And if you are living in America right now, how important it is to vote in November. It's all about taking control and making the world a better place.
Fantastic. Thank you both so much again for this amazing film. We appreciate it.
Thank you.